when the animal, and for instance, one example is here, we work with a rancher here up in Idaho, and the animals would consume or have access on the mountain pastures to about 500 to 1,000 different plants over the growing season.
Yeah.
And it would select many different plants that we with potential medicinal value that it can extract those nutrients from the cell wall that we would otherwise not be able to extract it from, metabolize that, like you said, maybe there's other compounds in that could be potentially toxic to us, detoxify those, and we get an additional array of metabolites, oftentimes in pre-processed version. And the other thing of that is also, and I think this is really what the Italian and the French scientists have really appreciated, is that they studied these compounds also in the 90s and 2000s, thinking of that, how can we graze these animals through the Sardinian mountain pastures and alpine pastures and produce these cheeses with these very unique flavors coming from the plant chemistry. And so these are things that besides could have potential, they definitely have health benefits for the animal. They could have potential benefits as the consumer, but they also impact the flavor profile or the terroir of the food.
Right, right. Yeah. So, I mean, some of it's just the flavor. It's, you're going to be your experience eating it. But like the other thing that you mentioned here is when you're talking about a pastured animal on a diverse diet of different plants in the pasture, not only is that different from a monocrop pasture or a grain-fed animal in a feeding lot, but there's a seasonality aspect to this too. Like different plants are present in the pasture at different times of the year. And, if the cow's grazing in the spring and then you harvest the cow, it's going to be a different end of product than if it's grazing a different time of the year. So like there's just, layer upon layer of complexity here.
Yeah, for sure. Because you do kind of see that within when animals come out of the dead of winter, the phytochemical richness of that product is a little bit lower than versus when it is on the grazing season. And I, growing up in the Netherlands, often drank farm fresh milk, and you could taste that. The milk that you got in the winter when the animals were on feed was not as complex as when you could taste the grasses in it. Essentially, the moment these animals were out on pasture, on the fresh spring grasses, the milk flavor would change immediately, and you would taste that. So it's certain that we can taste these things and result in flavor enhancement. But yeah, also the antioxidant value of that milk would go up at that point.
One of the things I want to ask you about too is, so on this topic of the compounds in foods getting sort of transformed as they move through the food chain, there's probably examples where, say, a plant might contain something that we can't digest, and the cow can, say, transform it into something that's actually an active metabolite inside of us that has nutritional value or that has some kind of medicinal value, has something good for us, basically. Yeah. Can you talk about some examples of that where, basically something like a cow is transforming something in a plant that's unusable to us directly into something that we can use? How common is that, and what are some examples?
Yeah, so I mean, we studied various metabolites, and some things that we really found, for instance, if you look at a compound like cinnamoyl glycine, which is cinnamic acid, it's rich in cinnamon, but it's rich in any green plant, really. So that's one compound, and it usually once they get metabolized through phase 1 and phase 2 metabolism in the gut and the liver of the animals, they get attached to a sugar, they get attached to a sulfate, they get attached to an amino acid because they are more stable that way. They like to seek a friend, and so you can see that transformation